Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the hopeful elect of Israel, you Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian, and Haitians. Gotta give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rikah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, who teach well, and a sincere salutation to all the Akim pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Akwaf who are listening and learning, the few sisters who are listening and learning. I'm Isaiah, coming at you another lesson in true fact, faith, and edification, another daily edification. Lord's willing to be edifying. Yahweh is the Most High name, not Jehovah, not Yahweh, not God. It's Yahweh. And his son, his only begotten son name is Yahweh Shai. Not Jesus, not Yahshua, not Yeshua. It's Yahweh Shai. So got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Lord's willing, this be edifying. Just some few news updates.
An apocalyptic soundtrack, but actually an impressive feat of construction. According to the People's Daily, this is the fourth day of the building of a 1,000-bed hospital in Wuhan, due to be completed by Sunday. This is the epicenter of this novel coronavirus. The numbers needing medical help in Hubei province are growing. More than 2,700 people have been diagnosed, 461 of them are severely ill, and 81 have died. The Chinese government is under pressure, dispatching the premier and vice premier to the Hubei region to assess the situation. Premier Li Keqiang promising to ship in more protection gear and medical teams, and guaranteeing food supplies, while later urging construction workers to hurry up with the hospital. The rate of infection and spread is still uncertain. A flu epidemic can kill tens or even hundreds of thousands. In other coronavirus outbreaks like SARS in the early 2000s, 800 died. But this is early days. Some experts at Imperial College London estimate that at the upper end, as many as 100,000 people could already be infected. However, while sicker people appear more vulnerable to the virus, this is not across the board.
Well, the most recent reports, there was a paper in The Lancet just came out, shows that actually it is quite a wide age range, and not everyone who is ending up in hospital has risk factors. It does appear that people with diabetes or high blood pressure are at greater risk, but that doesn't mean to say that other people are spared.
The suspicion is the coronavirus started here in the Wuhan seafood market, possibly from wild animals sold there.
They've looked at the market itself to see if there was virus in the market itself, like contamination. And some of the samples from the environmental sampling came back positive for novel coronavirus. We understand that they are also testing animals. We haven't heard of any positive animals that have come back.
The virus has spread, but not in huge numbers to other countries. But many governments are taking their citizens out of Wuhan. The UK Foreign Office, though, has been accused of being slow.
Very, very limited contact, to be honest. They've not really reached out to the British expat community in Wuhan, and that's been extremely disappointing for us. I find it a very scary situation to be in, and would very much like to be repatriated. And I would like it to be done so in a safe manner, where when we get back to UK, we're quarantined, so there's no risk of us spreading the virus to other people in the UK.
And indeed, tonight the Health Secretary said they were advising people returning from China to isolate themselves for 14 days.
The Foreign Office is rapidly advancing measures to bring UK nationals back from Hubei province. I've asked my officials to ensure there are appropriate measures in place upon arrival to look after them and to protect the public.
The lockdown of Wuhan and surrounding cities continues, people only venturing out when they have to, and medical staff are said to be exhausted as the crisis shows no signs of abating.
So I just want to thank all the doctors and nurses in Wuhan who've been out fighting the virus. It's been really inspiring, and they're very, very brave people.
One report from China said that the infection has been passed on by people not knowing they're ill, making it harder to detect and easier to spread. The main symptoms, however, are fever, dry cough and shortness of breath.
Well, earlier I spoke to Tang Bo inside Wuhan. He's a correspondent for the China Global Television Network, which is owned by the national broadcaster. And I asked him what had been happening in Wuhan today.
Entrusted by President Xi Jinping, Premier Li Keqiang arrived on Monday in Wuhan to instruct on epidemic control and prevention efforts against the virus. He spoke through a walkie-talkie to an infected patient on video screen, and he met with and also encouraged frontline medical personnel. And Premier Li also visited the site where construction crews were busy building one of two new hospitals that health authorities ordered up to house those infected. He has declared that the country will spare no efforts to help complete the new hospital by February 3rd, and he is now leading a high-level group charged with fighting the outbreak.
How are ordinary people reacting? I mean, do they feel that everything that should have been done has been done quickly enough? Or have there been failures?
Yes, indeed, there are pressures from the public that they're blaming the government, the local government was not reacting really quickly to the outbreak. And on Monday, the same day when the Premier Li Keqiang visited the city, the mayor of Wuhan City received an interview from China State Television saying that he will be able to take the responsibility of those disinformation and disclosure and the delay of the disclosure of the information. And he and also the leader of the CPC party committee of the city will, when necessary, to step down if they have to take the responsibility to better manage the virus control and prevention efforts against it.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Natalie McDermott, a clinical lecturer at King's College London, and Kerry Brown, director of the Lao China Institute, also King's College, who was a British diplomat in Beijing at the time of the 2002 SARS outbreak. But first, Dr. Natalie McDermott, this interesting advisory from the government tonight that people who return from infected areas should self-isolate. Is that a technical term that you as an expert would regard as viable?
Well, obviously any form of trying to ask people to isolate themselves or quarantining involves the cooperation of those who are being quarantined or isolated. So it is feasible, provided there is good information to the people who are being asked to self-isolate and the reasons behind it. And it's also wise because at the moment we're not sure if this virus can spread at the point when people don't have symptoms yet. So it appears that may be the case, as there have been some cases in China that have done that. And so it would be wise for people who know they have travelled from an area or who've had contact to self-isolate themselves on coming back and avoid large gatherings of people.
From your own expertise, have you been able in any sense in the last 2 or 3 weeks during which this has been happening of understanding more about the coronavirus?
I think we're understanding more as we watch it spread and as we see the extent of disease. There's still a lot for us to learn, and some of that will involve work inside a laboratory, not just the observation of what's happening clinically. But I think that we're seeing an infection that for most people is likely a relatively mild form of influenza, but then for a certain group of people, particularly the elderly and those with medical problems, they're developing more severe infections and pneumonias and inflammation in the lungs. And for a very small group of that group, a proportion are dying.
And that then poses the question whether we really know how many people are really suffering from it.
Yes, I think it's difficult to know exactly how many, because there may be some people who simply have a cough or a cold or are just feeling a bit under the weather, and they're not going to seek medical attention, and then they may not be tested for it. So it's likely that there may be a large number of people who could be carrying the virus but not unwell enough to seek medical attention and so are not tested.
From our own experience in Britain, we don't know anything about this particular virus because it hasn't been seen before, but we do know about SARS. Do we see much linkage?
So the reports so far about the genetic makeup of this virus are that they are quite similar to SARS. there's about an 80% or so match in terms of the genetic sequence. So it will behave in a similar manner, but the question is that 20% difference, does that change how the virus behaves in terms of how infectious it is, and does it change the severity of disease that you might get? And so far this disease does not seem to be as severe as the SARS infection was, but obviously we're still learning from this virus at the moment.
Dr. McDermott, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. Well, now let me turn then to Kerry Brown. And now, amazingly, you were actually a diplomat in Beijing during the SARS experience. Can you, in any way, from this detached position, draw any comparisons? Is the control of the state just as absolute?
Well, I think the kind of idea in 2003, I think it was, when SARS really broke out in mainland China, that the central government sort of lost control for a while. Beijing in the spring of that year was like a ghost city, and the rest of the country, everyone sort of went into lockdown. But one of the complaints then was lack of information, and the fact that until Wang Qishan was brought in really to control it as the sort of mayor of Beijing, the head of Beijing, there was no real leadership. So there's a lot of criticism.
So do you see this one as having been much more effectively handled by the Chinese?
Well, so far I think they've acted very, very quickly, but they've also been criticised for that. So having complete lockdown in Wuhan and other places, has created, in a sense, another sense of panic. Also, social media now is much, much stronger. And so people are spreading their own kind of news. That has sometimes been helpful, and sometimes, the censors have had to pile in and stop people spreading news that's regarded as unhelpful. Is the government trusted more now? Well, that's questionable. I mean, Xi Jinping is the man who's meant to deal with crises, and he's regarded as a strong leader. So the logic would be he'd be able to deal with something like this, and that's what we're seeing happening at the moment. Is he able to do that?
But there has also been domestic sort of criticism to some extent. And I've even read accounts that he is regarded as having been somewhat damaged by this.
Well, the Communist Party of China under him is the ultimate risk manager and the ultimate crisis manager. And this is precisely the thing that I think people in other areas are happy to kind of live with, kind of more repression, because it's meant to be the party can deal with this. And the real problem at the moment is we don't know where this will end. If they do deal with it, and they may very well, then that's fine. If they don't, then it is a legitimacy problem.
Hey, and it's finna get worse, man. It's finna get worse. Just some news updates. I'm gonna play a few of these clips.
With more on this, we bring in Peter Schiff, CEO of Euro Pacific Capital. So, Peter, the 2020 started looking strong, but now the markets have pulled back slightly due to fears about the coronavirus and how that's going to affect the world's fastest growing economy. Now, some analysts are arguing that these fears are just completely overblown because look at history. In 2003, during the SARS epidemic, the S&P climbed almost 15% the 6 months after it was first detected. In 2006, we had the avian flu virus, which was another fast-moving pathogen, and we still gained about 5% that year. And then in 2014, we had the Ebola, and the S&P still gained 5.3%. So is 2020 going to be any different than the past?
Well, I think 2020 could be a bad year for the stock market, but it's not likely going to be because of this virus. Look, it's obviously too early to tell if there'll be any type of impact or meaningful impact on global trade, GDP, or the markets as a result of this virus. But I don't think the virus is having any effect on the U.S. stock market. I mean, it is down slightly, but it's hard to say why. To try to attribute that to this virus is just guessing. I mean, the U.S. stock market is very overvalued. The question is, why isn't it coming down? It should be coming down. The only thing really supporting it is the Federal Reserve and all the money they're printing with their stealth QE program, although it's not stealth, really. Everybody knows they're doing it. They just refuse to admit it. But there's no earnings behind this. There's no strong economy behind this. This is an inflation-driven bubble, but, the air should be coming out.
So industrial metals such as silver and copper,
hey, it's coming down, man.
But rhodium and the precious metal that's
all things are happening.
Exhaust fumes, that's actually surging right now. This comes as Asia and Europe automakers now have to abide by those stricter emission rules. But given the weakening auto market and the simple fact that auto sales are declining due to a lack of demand, how much higher is it expected to go?
Well, you're talking about auto demand or the metals, the base metals?
Well, how about both? Let's start with the base metals, and then as far as the auto demand, because we see that seems to be slowing down a lot, right?
Well, look, auto demand is going to expand over time, particularly in emerging markets, places like China and Southeast Asia. So it's a growth market. There's a lot of people that don't have cars that obviously want them, and a lot of people want better cars. So I think there's going to be a lot of growth there. It's not really a question of demand. Demand is always going to be there. It's a question of can people afford to buy the cars that they'd like? And do we have a robust enough economy? And do we have the productive capacity to make it all possible? I think there's going to be a lot of growth outside the United States in the auto sector. I think the U.S. auto sector is another bubble that was made possible by the Fed. You have Americans who are buying cars with 7 or 8 year loans. Where they're lying about their incomes just to qualify. So I think you have a dangerous auto bubble here. So I think, you're going to see a contraction in the U.S. market, but that's not the case in foreign markets, particularly in places like China, where people don't borrow money to buy cars. They buy cars that they can actually afford using the money they actually have.
And speaking of cars that people can't afford, how about the fact that there is a back and forth right now between the Trump administration and the EU, and specifically the Trump administration threatening additional tariffs on European automobiles? I mean, that's obviously going to hit Germany more than it would hit any other country in Europe if it were to happen. Who knows if it will or not? It's a lot of talk, at least at this point. But would that actually help the U.S. market if that were to happen?
No. I mean, it's not. First of all, it's going to backfire. But our deficit in automobiles has nothing to do, with unfair trade practices. It's just, we're just not as competitive. But meanwhile, look at the SUV market. Look at all of the restrictions that the United States imposes on foreign SUVs. I mean, in light small trucks. I mean, so we have huge protection there, and so we're very vulnerable to some type of counterattack by the rest of the world. So when you live in a glass house, you're not supposed to throw stones, and we haven't been playing fair in that part of the market. But look, anytime you do this kind of stuff, it always backfires. I mean, as much as Trump wants to pretend that the tariffs mean we're winning, we're not. We're losing. Our trade deficits are bigger today than before Trump was elected. So we haven't made any progress. All we're doing is we're raising taxes on our own citizens, to offset some of the tax cuts that they got earlier. But the bottom line is government spending is growing even faster. And so despite, the tariffs that they're collecting from American consumers, the budget deficits are exploding to record highs. So it's record high budget deficits or record high trade deficits. The last thing we want to do is escalate a trade war that we can't win.
Now let's go.
The gold and silver is corrupted, man. The gold and silver is corrupted, okay? Everything about North America, Babylon the Great, will cease till exist, man. Isaiah 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, okay?
Go back to talking about the China-U.S. trade. Huawei was always at the center of this, and early on in the trade war, the Trump administration, they had banned U.S. companies from selling chips and other parts Huawei needed to make equipment for 5G networks, claiming national security reasons. So this move was intended to cripple Huawei, but now, 18 months later, it seemed to have backfired. Texas Instruments, one of the oldest and leading chip makers in the U.S., announced that they're closing 2 chip plants in Texas due to the toughening U.S. technology sanctions and being unable to sell to Huawei, one of its biggest clients. So are we going to see a contraction in the U.S. semis industry? The stocks had already gained about 45% over last year.
Well, yeah, I think we're already seeing it. We're going to see a contraction, throughout the U.S. economy. You're already seeing it certainly in the industrial sector. Manufacturing has really been in a recession for a while. The question is, when is the service sector economy, which dominates the U.S. economy, when is that going to roll over into recession? It's long overdue. Obviously, there's a lot of politics involved now, as whether they can kick the can down the road long enough to kick the recession past the 2020 election. We'll see. If they can't do that, then I think that there's no way Trump is going to get reelected. But even if they can do it, I still think that Trump's going to have a much harder time than the markets perceive. And I think they have yet to price in what would happen, a discount in the market for the possibility of a Bernie Sanders becoming the next president of the United States. Because this is going to be very dangerous for the U.S. stock market. I mean, a lot of people were under the false impression that Trump was going to be bad for the stock market, even though he was promising fewer regulations and lower taxes. Sanders is promising to raise regulations dramatically, to raise taxes, to actually turn over control of corporate boards to the workers. I mean, you're talking about pressing a Marxist, socialist type agenda that has a lot of sympathy now in the Democratic Party, which might end up controlling the Senate as well as the House. So there is a lot of risk to the U.S. economy, to the U.S. market that everybody is ignoring at the moment.
Turbulence.
It's all gonna fall anyway, so it doesn't matter, man. It's all gonna fall. Here's another one.
Now, to take a deeper look into the state of U.S.-China trade relationship and Boeing's effect on the economy are Peter Schiff, CEO of Euro Pacific Capital, and Todd Bubba Horowitz, Chief Strategist at Bubba Trading. Now, Bubba, I wanted to start with you with the situation regarding Boeing. What do you make of the Treasury Secretary's assertion that this one aerospace giant is poised to cause an issue for the overall growth of the U.S. economy moving forward?
Good afternoon, Brent. Thanks for having me back. Listen, it's a big deal because they're the biggest exporter that we have. So it's going to have a direct effect on GDP, and certainly it has slowed sales, and it will allow Airbus, which is their only really main competitor, to possibly pick up some sales from there. I mean, this whole thing has been really a mess, and that's what happens when you let a company get in bed with a government agency and they get a plane out too fast. That's been the whole thing. So I think that's going to definitely hurt the GDP going forward.
And Peter, what do you think? Already Boeing has lost over $62 billion off of its market cap. Do you think there's a chance of recovery here?
Well, I'm sure over the long term there'll be a recovery, but in the short run, certainly, this will weigh on our exports, which also could weigh on the dollar. I've been thinking the U.S. dollar was headed lower anyway, but if we end up with bigger trade deficits, in part because we have fewer exports of aircraft, that is going to be another factor of many that I think will be weighing down the dollar and the U.S. economy.
All right, and now, Peter and Bubba, we want to shift gears, so we're going to start with Peter here first. Now, China's currency is now gaining momentum as the market is optimistic that a trade reconciliation is underway. Now, the RMB is now at 6.9 against the U.S. dollar, climbing 1% from its August lows, but it's still about 7.5% weaker compared to before the first tariffs were imposed by the U.S. in 2018. Now, do you think the market is cautiously positioning itself for a deal, or does this lack of enthusiasm signal investors don't believe that a phase one is truly going to happen despite it being signed here in 2 days?
Well, look, a phase one might happen because a phase one is insignificant. The real deal is supposedly phase two. That's the one that's not going to happen. So if anybody thinks we're going to have a substantive deal, they're wrong. But the reality is, I think the Chinese yuan is undervalued relative to the dollar, and I expect it to rise rather dramatically over time. And that's not going to be a good thing for the U.S. That's going to be a bad thing because it's going to make imports more expensive for Americans, so it's going to reduce our standard of living. And I do think ultimately it's going to push up interest rates as well, as the Chinese and a lot of other creditors are no longer lending money to Americans. And so we have to draw from our own savings pool, which is extremely shallow. It means the Federal Reserve is going to be printing a lot more money as it monetizes the debt that the Chinese and other nations no longer want to buy. And this is going to further lower the American standard of living.
The gold and silver of Babylon the Great is corrupted, man. Okay? These FRNs are worthless, man.
Now, Bubba, it is said that the U.S. is now going to be removing China's title as a trade manipulator as part of this phase one deal. So what do you have to say to that? Do you agree with Peter that currently the RMB is undervalued?
Well, it may or may not be undervalued. The one problem with the RMB or with the yuan, it does not trade freely. So it's always pinned by the Chinese government. So you can never get a true read of what they're trying to do with their currency. I mean, they're going to keep that currency low as long as they can because, again, all they're trying to do is offset the tariffs so we keep buying their goods. I don't agree at all with Peter here that it's going to explode to the upside because their government will not allow it to explode to the upside. That is one currency that is totally controlled, that is pinned, that can only move X amount per day other than the free-floating rest of the fiat currency. Now, the fiat currency system's another story, which is a joke altogether. But in the yuan case,
hey,
I don't think that
American dollar is a joke altogether.
And now, Peter, I want to... Yeah, Peter, go ahead and give us your reaction to that.
Well, I'm too busy trying to get the sun out of my face because there's unfortunately, there's a sun coming into a window here. So I didn't even get to hear what was saying. I was too busy trying to do this.
Well, essentially,
I agree.
Go ahead.
I agreed with you, Peter, a little bit, but I do say that because the yuan is so government controlled, they do not allow it to free float nor trade as far as it should in either direction, which is one of the issues with the yuan.
Well, the big mistake that the Chinese made over the years is undervaluing their currency. I mean, they did that deliberately because they wanted to maintain exports to the United States, but I think that was a key mistake. I mean, it helped America because we got to live beyond our means, but I don't think it did anything.
Hey, that sun coming through is spiritual, man. They all have been blinded by their insight, okay? They have been blinded by the wisdom of this world, man. They think they wise. They ain't wise, man. They're a bunch of fools. So, hey, that's spiritual, man, okay? Peter Schiff going to a lot about the economy and how the dollar collapsing, but that just represents all their wisdom is foolishness to Yahweh, man, okay? That's spiritual, man.
For the Chinese economy. In fact, it helped undermine it because they accumulated a huge pool of U.S. dollars that they ended up, doing things with that created malinvestments and other distortions. I think the best thing that can happen to China is to simply allow their currency to appreciate, to reduce their exports to the United States because we can't afford to pay for those products, to let their own nations consume that production so that their own people can benefit from their hard work. But unfortunately, Americans are going to have a rude awakening when all of a sudden we have to live within our means, and our means have been dramatically diminished over the years. We haven't been investing. We haven't been saving. We've been relying on an overvalued currency to import what the rest of the world produces. And we haven't saved very much. We've just been borrowing money to consume, and all this is going to come back to bite us.
Facts.
Now, Bubba, we are now at all-time highs in the market, but it seems that the
Isaiah
stock market
47:1.
is completely divorced from the economic reality. The auto industry has contracted and gotten worse. The retail apocalypse continues with more big box store closures. The U.S. PMI has been in contraction for 5 months in a row now, and it's at the lowest level we've seen since 2009. So what is all this telling you, and how would you position for it?
Well, right now it's telling me the markets are going to go up until they don't. And if anybody thinks differently, they should go see a doctor because, again, these markets will at some point melt down. But for today and for now, they're going to continue to go higher until they don't. As long as the cheap monetary policy is in play, there's no...
All grinding shall cease, as the scriptures say, and the doors in the street shall be closed, man. Okay? All work, everything is going to be destroyed. Everything is going to come to naught, man. You just keep living and you're going to see.
No place else to go. They have forced everybody into the equity market.
Facts.
Which is not a good thing.
Right.
And to Peter's point, however, I don't know that we live beyond our means. I mean, I don't believe that we can here there's no inflation. Ask a farmer if there's inflation in this economy.
Facts.
And their input costs
They
are
shooting
going up.
bad.
In the meantime, their outputs are coming down. So
The government had to set up a fund for the farmers, man, because they ain't making no money, man. Go look that up.
There's a lot of issues here, but the markets will go higher until they don't. And again, anybody who thinks they can time that out and say that this is the top of the market is nuts because
It's
it can't
nuts.
be done. It's been tried, and many have been broke trying to predict the top. It will go down, and you'll have plenty of time to get out if you don't panic once it starts to sell off. But for
Psalm 64:8, man, they should make their own tongue to fall upon themselves, man. Hey, they telling you that it's finna collapse, man. What you just gonna do when this happen, man? Hey, cause the hopeful elect is putting on the whole arm of Yahweh Shah, and they gonna be protected in that day.
For now, the way it looks,
Well, I don't
look
know.
at all the reasons why we should go lower. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Peter.
I don't think people are going to have time to get out. I think this is a bubble. It's going to pop.
Facts.
I agree. There's no way to know.
Ain't gonna be no time, man.
You got time to get out in 09.
Hey.
You got time to get out in 01.
As Isaiah 33:14 say, hey, the hypocrite gonna be surprised, man. When these things hit, when Jacob trouble hit, man, Jacob trouble consists of everything. The economy collapsing, the dollar crashing, ain't gonna be no jobs. They gonna usher in the RFID microchip, and you gonna be surprised when these things happen, man. Though it be told to you, right? Habakkuk 1:5. The Lord said he will work in our day. Though it be told to them, they will not believe it, man. Okay? And people gonna be surprised as Isaiah 33:14 reads.
You got time to get out. Every time
really.
you got time to get out with it, except for the 87.
No, because the minute it drops, everybody says the correction is over. You got to buy the dip. So I think most people are going to watch all the paper profits vanish. Yeah, look, it's going to be
I'm not
very
saying
difficult.
that they're right, Peter.
It's not just going to be. Yeah, it's not just going to be that people are going to lose dollars when the stock market bubble pops, but the dollar bubble is even bigger. And when that pops, even the dollars you haven't lost are going to lose most of their value.
Facts.
So I think Americans are going to be wiped out in the U.S. stock market and the bond market. I mean, people are going to be surprised at how much of their...
Isaiah Psalm 64:8. They shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves, man. You people trusting these FRN notes will be wiped out, man.
wealth they lose playing it safe in the bond market, because you're not playing safe.
Right.
You're playing with dynamite there.
Facts.
There are no U.S. dollar denominated assets that can be considered safe right now. It is a giant casino. And yeah, you know, people
It's a
think
gambling.
the economy is
It's all a gamble, man.
to blow more air into the stock market bubble and the bond market bubble, but the economy is in worse shape now than it's ever been. It's in far worse shape than it was before Trump took office, mainly because he continued to pursue the failed policies of Obama, who
Facts.
pursued the failed policies of Bush.
Facts.
All we've done is spent our way into bankruptcy here.
Listen, for 150 years, it's gone up almost every decade but two. So, again, you could be right, but I would tend to doubt that the United States is going to collapse because of all the issues that you pretend to bring to the party.
Hey, you see? Satan divided against Satan, man. How can the kingdom stand? Hey, he don't want to accept this guy on the right here. He don't want to accept the fact that Peter Schiff giving him straight skinny, man. He giving him straight facts, man. He don't want to accept it. But watch, in that day, proud ass devil, man. Let's get this. No, I don't want that yet. Let's get this one.
Hey guys, real quick, before you watch this video, I want you to know something, that for quick access, you can find all my stuff in one place. It's called Portable TV, portable.tv/download. All my exclusive stuff will live there. Okay, enough talking. Here's your video. Markets, they plunged today. The Dow alone took a huge dip, down about 450 points. You know what's interesting about this? What's interesting is that most of the experts on Wall Street are saying the cause for this drop is the coronavirus, which does seem to be spreading. Joining us now, RT correspondent Saya Tavenger, who's good enough to join us. She has some experience reporting on the markets and is going to try and describe to us. Let's start with this. So what exactly happened in the markets today? What was down? What was up?
Well, Rick, a big question in the mind of investors has been if and when the coronavirus was going to infect the stock market, and we're seeing it has affected the stock market. You know, it's really reacting, and stocks opened the lowest that they have since October of last year. And here's a quick breakdown of the stock market reaction. The Dow is down 1.8%, while the S&P 500 slid 1.3%, and the Nasdaq tumbled 1.5%. Now, this outbreak also comes as the market has been really climbing, mainly by large technology stocks. So anytime we see the market being extremely bullish for an excessive amount of time, that also leads to market weakness. So some analysts are saying, you know, we're contributing this to the coronavirus. It might not be, and some are saying, no, this is the actual outcome of the
I get it. They're saying if it wasn't this, something else would have triggered it, right?
Exactly, exactly. Now, here's a quick guide that shows how the market has reacted to some major epidemics.
So I think the question is,
Here you go. The epidemic diseases. The epidemic pestilences.
What does the coronavirus have to do with the market? Why would the coronavirus affect any particular industry or business?
Right. Well, think about it this way, right? China, where the coronavirus is coming from, has a population of 1.3 billion people. So in order for that virus not to spread, as of last Friday, China has shut down part of the Great Wall as well as 16 cities. 16 cities in China are actually pretty much shut down. So they're limiting the movement of some 46 million people. Now, Now, when you limit the movement of about almost 50 million people, think of tourism, right? We're
Right.
talking about travel, leisure, retail, gambling. Now, these are all being hit by the crisis because a key factor in the market is psychological. So a lot of people are thinking this could become an epidemic and this could really spread, and which is why it's impacting the market. And
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Exactly.
I mean, if people don't travel, then nobody's staying in hotels,
Yes.
nobody's flying.
Right.
So airline
is down, exactly like us. Like Trip.com is down 10%.
Wow.
Expedia is down 3%. United Airlines is down. Delta is down. So this has a lot to do with travel anxiety. Sometimes it's not really a huge factor, but it's the anxiety, which is why we're hearing so much about it.
Let me ask you a final question on this. Is there some kind of historic comparison that gives us maybe a broader perspective on how something like this takes place?
Well, a lot of people are comparing the coronavirus to the SARS outbreak of 2003, and the SARS outbreak did contribute to a huge global market in 2003, but there were a lot of other factors involved. If you recall, in 2003, we also invaded Iraq, so that also had to do with the markets, and there was also another.
And they trying to invade now, man, in Iran.
So even though everyone is comparing this to the SARS outbreak of 2003, they're not really good comparisons.
No, and the graphic that you just put up for us shows that the SARS virus had a bigger impact, right?
Yeah, SARS had a huge impact. There was about a 20% decline in the S&P 500 for the year, but then still at the end, it ended up actually rebounding. So what's going to happen is that markets are going to overreact, really overreact, which is what analysts are saying. And it's going to probably get a lot worse before it gets better. And there's also another factor. Technology stocks are really high. So a lot of investors are thinking, you know what, why not sell now? Which is also contributing to the whole market decline. So there's a lot of factors. It's not just the fact that, it's not even an epidemic yet. It's 81 deaths so far.
What do they call that? The market perfect storm.
Exactly.
Great stuff. Nice report. Thank you for explaining us and taking us through that so much. Hey guys,
All right, now let's get this one.
Good morning, everyone. Chris Martinson here of Peak Prosperity, and I'm here with a coronavirus update for you. It is 10:17 in the morning on Monday. This is January 27th. And here's what I want to do for you really quickly. I'm really worried that people are being not just poorly informed, which is true, but absolutely uninformed about what I think, is probably the most important information ever. I mean, it's once in 100 years you go through a pandemic. We've got all the signs of an absolute pandemic going on. So I just wanted to show you a quick experience of why this bothers me so much, and then I'm going to take you through a tour of the information I am actually looking at. So to make this really fun and clear, I've done a couple of things. First, I took a separate browser. I don't usually use Internet Edge, but I went there, cleared out the cookies so they don't know who I am. Now I've taken my VPN and I've routed through Mexico. So I'm just going to have an absolute anonymized experience. Internet Edge doesn't know who I am. So I'm going to show you what the average person is seeing out there right now. So let's bring that up. All right. So first thing is, this is the average news feed you would see if you were just an anonymous person coming in. So what are we noticing? Well, apparently, if we prioritize these things by what's on top, the Grammys are really important. Fans apparently are really upset about Usher's Prince tribute. Something else going on here. There's an ad, of course. You always get those up top. Kobe Bryant. Authorities are probing Kobe Bryant. Big story. But is it the most important story in your possible life? So again, here we see Kobe. Another ad. Some sports scores. Let's go down. Let's see how far we have to go down before we find something about the coronavirus here. Stars are reacting to the death of Kobe Bryant. I don't know what this is. Off the campaign trail senator. Couldn't be more relevant right now as far as I'm concerned. More ads. Kobe again. Oh, here we go. Dow Future Sync 400 points as coronavirus cases rise. That's it. It's about money. It's not about your personal health. It's not about the preparations you should be taking right now. It's not even about the impact that this will probably have on things like global supplies, local supplies of things, as this pandemic catches fire and shuts down trade and travel. But look at this. It's the Grammys again. The dark side of owning a car collection. Something about stranger feeds a chained dog for you. Yeah, a feel-good story, but it's not important. It's not context. All this political stuff we're looking at, it's the Grammys. politics, distraction, 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 distraction after distraction. None of this has any important value to your life besides being merely interesting. It's not actionable, and it's not what you need to know. Look at this. Still scrolling. What am I finding here? Nothing. Grammys, ads, sports, Kobe, on and on and on again. And I'm looking, show me, look how far I have to come down here. Oh, look. Here's the top stories from Bloomberg. Bloomberg does a pretty good job on this stuff. Virus death toll at 80. China extends New Year holiday. That doesn't give me any sense of what's going on here. So let me show you what I am looking at so we can get a sense of that. So let me pull that down. Let me pull this back up. And I'm going to start here first. Here's an article that I consider important. It says containing new coronavirus may not be feasible. I think that's absolutely the case, of course. Experts say as they warn of possible sustained global spread. Well, this is all but a guarantee at this point in time, and I'm going to show you why, because of that other thing I brought up. This is a current flight-aware tracking showing all, this is China right here, showing all the flights. This is a major landing hub. Here's a major landing hub. So we see flights taking off, coming towards, departing from China. So can it be contained? No, not as long as at this exact moment. This is just a snapshot of, this is live. So we're seeing flights in the air at this moment. We have hundreds and hundreds of flights in the air right now. And let me tell you why that's important. So let me switch over here real quick. I'm showing you here, we're comparing two things in this chart, and I found this over on Reddit, so this isn't my chart, but the data looks right to me. And we're comparing the infections over time of the coronavirus, which is officially labeled the 2019-nCoV, new coronavirus. How many of those are infected versus the SARS infected, baseline to 0, which is when was the first day where they could trace back to say that's patient 0, case 1. So they're both at 0. SARS actually wasn't tracked until March, but its first case was tracked way back to November. This is March 2003. That would have been November 2002. Meanwhile, the nCoV virus, this new coronavirus, first case was December 8th. Here we are. We now actually, if this was updated, we would see another dot here officially. I think the actual dot's up here somewhere. So, hey, if the flights statistically were pretty safe back here, I think, so all those things that were flying around from December 8th through about January 15th, 17th, somewhere in that zone, those were okay. But ever since then, the flights should not be in the air. Flights here are just stupid. So, yeah, the experts say, we're a little concerned about how we could contain this. Every single plane that leaves here was probably has the same amount of infectivity capability as every other plane before it, all added together. That's the nature of exponential functions. So every plane that's leaving from these days out here is just a much, much bigger risk. All right, so now let's return here. Let's see what else I think is really important news. Here's important news. Hong Kong experts, tens of thousands likely now infected. I agree with this report as I put out in my video yesterday. The crammed hospitals and the official case statistics don't line up even slightly. I'm going to trust the crammed hospitals as a first place. They are estimating that some 44,000 people in Wuhan alone likely to have been infected by the new virus. This is an estimate they're making. I think that's probably directionally correct. And is it exactly right? No. But it's probably a lot more correct than the 2,800 that are currently being reported, or 2,900, whatever it is now. I mean, they're saying 2,744 here, but I think it just got bumped up. At any rate, it's very serious. And, they're saying that governments should implement draconian measures. And that would include not seeing planes flying all over the sky, and because of this little chart right here. Next. Look at this. Mongolia closes border with China, shuts down schools, bans public gatherings in an effort to prevent coronavirus. That's the first state-level border closing I'm aware of. You can expect more of these. They're coming. The impacts off of that are going to be very, very hard to predict, but with a just-in-time global delivery system for manufacturing, this is a huge, huge issue that's coming up. So that's important. That's really actually what's important. That's big news. Now, how about this news? CDC official, this is 11 hours ago, we're preparing as if this is a pandemic. They haven't actually gone out and called it one yet, but they're preparing as if it is. And they're being super, super cautious because, again, as we pointed out a couple days ago in a video and again yesterday, the Chinese health minister is clearly saying people are infectious before they have symptoms of the coronavirus. Now, look at this. Here's the weasel wording of very careful bureaucracy that's going to be 3 or 4, maybe 10 steps behind a fast-moving virus. We at CDC don't have clear evidence that patients are infectious before symptoms onset, but we're actively investigating that possibility. Way too cautious there. We've got tons of evidence that patients are infectious before symptom onset, and so I don't even understand why they feel the need to try and soft pedal this, except they don't want you to know this. They'd rather you weren't panicking, and I understand that from a certain standpoint. We're not asking people to panic, but we're asking people to have appropriate information, which is if this thing even has the possibility of being transmissive in an asymptomatic state, you need to know that. You deserve to know that. You need to understand that you should be taking appropriate precautions, right? You know, we need to be preparing as if this is a pandemic, but I continue to hope that's not. Not we need to be preparing as if. We need to be preparing for this pandemic. Let's change some verbiage there. That would be better. So CDC, like a lot of bureaucracies, is going to be a little bit behind the curve. Great organization. I'm going to show you some stuff from them that I think is really helpful and good. But at the same time, this is really not something that that they're far enough along. So, what should you be doing? Well, what I want you to look at then would be, let's see. There's a couple of things from the CDC I really do like, and I like a lot. So they have a variety of checklists that are very, very good to go through, and things that you should be preparing for. Looks like I'm having a little trouble pulling this up, but here's an emergency kit checklist for kids and families. Look at this, take a snapshot, write this down, come to this area for the CDC. This tells you all the things that you might want to know about you would need to have in an emergency. So here's a nice little list. I agree with everything on this list. They may not all be appropriate for you, but they've got checklists here. And as well, lots of other things over here that you could actually go through at this point in time. All right. As well, I'm going to see if I can find this next one because this is really important. Yeah, I like this one. Was it here? Yeah, this one. Get this one. Absolutely. Download this. Put a 3-ring hole binder punch in it and put it in a binder. I've done that. This is about how to get your household ready for a pandemic flu. Lots of great advice in here. Let's scroll down real quickly. Look.
See, I just wanted to show you that how these how the heathen prepare, man. But the elect is gonna prepare through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah. When you trust in the Lord, man, okay, the elect gonna have a covering. Just showing you how he was going into how all these other news articles are out, but they really ain't talking about this coronavirus, man. That was the point of this video. So let me play this last one. Cause this is an Edomite. Could be a Jake, who knows? An Edomite for the most. He's going into how he finna show you how China is shut down, man, with martial law. Okay, it's martial law right now in China, man. And he's gonna show you on his daily little walk going to the grocery store, man, to get groceries for a couple weeks, man.
How are you? My name's Ben Kavanagh. I live in Wuhan, and today I'm going to go to the shop. One mask, another mask. Apparently this mask actually doesn't do much, but 2 masks is always better than 1. Can't forget the most important thing, and the silliest thing. Got a big backpack. Got a big suitcase. Got my gloves. I'll wash these when I get home, just to be safe from all the stuff I'll touch on my way. Oh, pretty hot. Pretty warm. I don't expect expect to run into anyone today. I'm not going to touch them with my hand. I'm just going to knee it. It's open. Another beautiful day in quarantine Wuhan. This is a city with a population bigger than London. This is usually a very busy street. All these shops would be open. Lots of noise. Surrounded by apartments. And yet, there's no one on the street. It's so quiet. Shop. See, this intersection is usually one of the busiest intersections. That's why it's got the walkway above it. And as you can see, there's a couple cars. But other than that, fairly empty. There's my friend, who we are going to the shop with. Don't need to look left and right, there's no cars. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm well, are you well?
I'm well.
Got your suitcase?
Got my suitcase, it's very large.
Let's go. This is Shanganglu, Hong Kong Road. Usually a very, very busy road. But obviously not today. Not for the foreseeable future. Great to bike though. No buses. No nothing. Very few people as well. There's a hospital. Not one of the big ones, just a standard hospital. There's loads around Wuhan, but we're pretty sure it's closed right now. There are still cars, but cars like this, we think they're bringing people to work. The punishment for driving is a fine and potentially losing your license. So these people must have good reason to be driving. And they are all going in there. Maybe the hospital opens later. Little puppy. He's so cute, but we're not going to risk going near him. Wow, that was cute. What is this? 8 lanes? 10 lanes? 10-lane road. No cars. We have arrived. Car 4. Can stock up for weeks and then not leave again. Gloves ripped, whatever. Yeah. We both got the same idea. Bye-bye. Meat produce. Give that a miss for a while. Frozen stuff. This is the busiest I've ever seen the queues. And we are gonna be wild.
Hey, Ezekiel 4:13. Hey, our food shall be defiled among. We should eat our bread defiled among the Gentiles. Hey, they don't even know if that food good over there, man. Okay? Even though the disease is, whatever, through humans. But hey, man, you can't trust nothing these days, man.
Self-checkout only.
Look at that. Self-checkout only. Because in China, ain't no cash, man. Okay? They ain't using cash in China, man. They digital over there. And that show you all these cashiers, man. Hey, they ain't gonna be needed here a little while, man.
Going in with the backpack extra.
Yeah, they gotta get their foods in boats, man, for weeks, man. Wait till they hit the shores of North America, man. What you 2/3 gonna do then?
Heavy suitcase. Now back out to a deserted city.
Hey, Babylon the Great gonna be deserted too, man. Okay? Hey, it should be deserted, man. A desert and wasteland. Thus saith the Bible.
Thank you. I've never seen this road without cars and traffic.
Look it up, man. Deserted, man. Martial law is in that city, man. Wait till they declare martial law right here in North America.
I'd rather not get in it though. People still queuing for the pharmacy. Maybe prescriptions. It is empty.
You'll never see China like this on a regular day, man. Them lanes, them streets will be busy, man. This is China, man.
It's past 10 o'clock. You wouldn't know it.
You wouldn't even know it. Hey, when you watch what's this movie? I Am Legend. The movie The Road. Okay? Walking Dead. Right? Resident Evil. This is what it's gonna look like in Babylon the Great, man. If you just keep living, you gonna see all these movies that they play out, man. Resident Evil, I Am Legend, The Road, Walking Dead. It's gonna look like this, man. Right here in Babylon the Great, man. The city, the nation that never sleep.
Again, this is another very busy road usually. Nothing.
And this is news updates. Death and destruction is closing in. So with that, got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rikah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, who teach well. And a sincere salutation to all the Akim pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Agwaf who are listening and learning. A few sisters who are listening and learning. I'm Isaiah. Lord willing, they're coming into another lesson in true facts, faith, and edification, man. Lord willing is edifying. Until next time, I say shalom.